I'm glad to know that you're here and delighted to share this time with you. I am Megan Schmelzer. I'm with the Infant Early Childhood Mental Health team within the Policy Center here at 0 to 3. And my friends here and I were just chatting about how we are so happy to finally be at this day. This has been a labor of love, this crosswalk for multiple years now. And we are just delighted to finally to be with you today and share this work with you. And hopefully this can be a really helpful resource for each of you and for the field and continue to make us all better. So I see some great chats, hellos in the chat from all over. Please feel free to put your name and location in there. We have a great big group today. We had a lot of wonderful responses. So before we start, I would like, I don't know if you were like me rushing around. I was saying this is my lunch today. So I would appreciate if we could all take a big deep breath together. And today is the first day of spring. Happy spring to all of you. I'm coming to you from Michigan. And we like to start all of our presentations with a land acknowledgement. So if you are by a window or a door, take a moment to look outside and see what spring looks like for you. And what land that you are on, acknowledge those that came before us with a heart of gratitude for all that they have shared and toiled and suffered and celebrated. And I invite you to listen. Just listen to what the land and the earth has to say to you today and maybe this season. So with that, I would love to introduce this panel with some of my dear friends here. And you, as you each offer your presentation, you can share a little bit more, but Erin and Nicole and Andrea and Lauren, just so grateful to have worked on this project with you, and we've had representation from the Alliance for the Advancement of Infant Mental Health, the Association of Infant Mental Health of Hawaii, and 0 to 3, and of course the Center of Excellence for Infant Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation. So with that, Nicole, I'm going to hand it over to you.
There. Hi, everyone. Great to be with all of you. I see so many familiar names, like Megan. I was wishing I could see your faces as well. But so because I do know several of you, this is probably going to feel like a grounding or a review, but I don't know what everyone's level of understanding is. So I'm going to kind of start at the beginning, which is essentially a reminder to all of us that babies and young children don't yet have the words to describe their needs or their frustrations. In this field, we need to be able to understand their behavior as their communication, and we need the relational skills to partner with the parents and the caregivers to support those adults as they learn and respond to their baby's messages. And of course, to do all of this with cultural humility. So essentially what I'm saying is that doing any work with or on behalf of infants, young children, caregivers, and families requires specialized knowledge, skills, and reflective capacities that are informed by infant and early childhood mental health principles and practices. Next slide. This is true for all sectors of the workforce and all disciplines. And there are strategies for assuring that the workforce receives infant and early childhood mental health informed education and training, and that training gets integrated into day-to-day practice. This is critical for systems and programs, which many of you represent, who are working to address social problems like expulsion and suspension in early childhood education settings. As I'm sure most of you or all of you know, a disproportionate number of Black boys in particular are impacted by this crisis, creating the preschool to prison pipeline. So a primary strategy for addressing this crisis is implementing infant and early childhood mental health consultation to support teachers and early care providers. Obviously, well-trained and qualified infant and early childhood mental health consultants don't grow on trees. There are specific knowledge and skill areas that they need in order to do their work competently. Next slide. So We're here today to talk about two particular set of competencies. Together, they serve as a complementary strategy for those working as or working toward becoming infant and early childhood mental health consultants. At this moment, I want to acknowledge a colleague who's also happens to be from Hawaii, whose name is Amanda Lunig, who may or may not be on this call. But we were talking about how the competency systems that are represented in this photograph here, they're both really complex. And so crosswalking them made for a very, very long document. And so there were times that I have felt myself maybe defending how long and complex the competencies are. But Amanda is fabulous about reminding us that they need to be complex. This work that we do with infants, young children, and families is complex. So of course the competencies are as well. So these two sets of competencies are the ones for infant and early childhood mental health endorsement that were created by the Michigan Association for Infant Mental Health. Those competencies and endorsement are managed by the Alliance for the Advancement of Infant Mental Health. And you're going to hear more about that in a minute from Andrea Pennick. And then the infant mental health consultation competencies were created by Georgetown's Center for Excellence for Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation. And Lauren will be saying a little bit more about those competencies. So this crosswalk between these two sets of competencies was created collaboratively by the Alliance, the Center of Excellence, and 0 to 3, with support from the Association for Infant Mental Health in Hawaii. The idea of the crosswalk arose many years ago, as Megan referred to, but the catalyst that really made it become a reality was Hawaii's need to identify qualified providers of infant and early childhood mental health consultation. And you'll hear about that more from Erin a little later. The purpose of this crosswalk is essentially to serve as a tool that identifies the commonalities between these two sets of competencies in order to provide consultants themselves with a map to the endorsement credential. So somebody who's already working as a consultant might be able to look at this and say, hey, I already meet all or most of the competencies. I could proceed and earn the infant mental health or the early childhood mental health endorsement credential. The other part of the purpose is to lay out a professional development direction for other infant and early childhood mental health informed professionals who might be interested in providing mental health consultation. So they might be able to take a look at this crosswalk and say, hey, if I could get some training about X, Y, and Z, I'll meet the competencies not just for my infant mental health endorsement, but also the competencies for mental health consultation. And then the other part of the purpose is for states and countries whose infant mental health associations are members of the Alliance to identify qualified infant and early childhood mental health consultants, like who's already out there who understands these critical concepts and practices. How can we support those people to become part of a mental health consultation workforce? And then the last part of the purpose is that having this crosswalk can help determine if there are additional professional development opportunities that are needed. What are the gaps that we would need to fill to provide professional development, training, reflective supervision opportunities that would build a really strong and qualified mental health consultation workforce? So this is just a little snapshot of the crosswalk itself. As I said, it's long and it's complex, but just so it's not quite so abstract, this is just a screenshot of it. But essentially what you see here in the blue columns are the Center of Excellence competencies for mental health consultation. There are several categories, so this is a snapshot just of a few of them in the second category. And then the columns that are in green are the Alliance or the endorsement competencies. So you'll see that third blue column, there's like an asterisk there on the first one. That is to indicate that this particular competency is really critical. They're all important, but we tried to indicate as we created this crosswalk, which ones really were the most critical, knowing that systems and people can't focus on all the things all at once. So it felt important to sort of do that. Then you'll see in that first green column, there's either an equal sign or there's sort of the wavy equal sign that means approximately. And that's to sort of give folks an indication of, is this competency fully equal, fully met in the endorsement competencies, or is it partially met, as in that like wavy equal sign? That's an example of one where As you'll see in that 2B7, that's a very complete and complex and progressive way to describe this particular competency. The Alliance endorsement, uh, I was going to say equal, but almost equal competency captures some of it, but not all of it. So that's just to sort of orient you to what's in the crosswalk itself, and how hopefully we'll hope it can be useful to individuals and to systems. Turn it back over.
Thank you, Nicole, so much for that. Good grounding, even though we know, hopefully, most of us know lots of these things, it's always helpful to be reminded. Lauren, I think you're up next.
I am, yes, and I don't have new slides to add because I have the fun job of giving some background and context for the Center of Excellence for Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Consultations competencies. So for those of you I don't know, my name is Lauren Rabinowitz, and I am the program director for the SAMHSA-funded Center of Excellence for Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here with you all today. And thank you so much, Nicole, for that really excellent grounding and for saying what is one of the most important pieces of how complex this work is. And I say that all the time when looking through these competencies. I'm like, can't we tighten it a little bit? And then I'm like, well, we can't even make our name less than, a word salad to say. So, of course we can't make our competencies less, because yes, this work is incredibly complex, and we are supporting families and children and caregivers that are often in very complex situations. So I think it actually, it does service to and creates so much integrity for the work when we are so thoughtful around how we are professionalizing our workforce. So I got to go on a fun little mission to make sure I fully understood the very beginnings of the competencies for infant and early childhood mental health consultation, because a lot of the work probably was happening when I was a mental health consultant many years ago, but a lot of this work, was happening across the country. There were professionals and experts working on consultation, but there wasn't yet an organizing body, at a national level that was able to take all the great thinking around consultations, sort of put it together into a set of competencies. We had folks doing this work because we know that Head Start has mandated that mental health consultants, they're in the Head Start performance standards, that every program has a mental health consultant. That's been around for decades, and yet there has not been a federal center that was able to put all this great thinking together. So really the first time that there was a set of competencies organized and written out for mental health consultation predates the Center of Excellence, and the very first time was actually through a resource that we affectionately for many years called the Bubbles. The Bubbles website, the Bubbles page, really just the Bubbles is what everyone called it. And this was a set of, it was like a professional development online tool that was funded by the Office of Head Start through the National Center on Health and Wellness. Was the previous iteration of the Technical Assistance Center for Head Start. And there was we were tasked with creating a set of modules, and that was the first time that there really was enough funding, for lack of a better word, to bring all these experts together. And so some of you may have seen this website, some of you may not have seen it, and it's actually changed a little bit on how you access it. So if anyone's interested more in hearing about the Bubbles, I can get you more information. But so yeah, so I cross-referenced a lot of sources, and I was like, was that the first time? And so yeah, so that's when those competencies started. But I would say what's really important is, so that was around 2015. And then 2016, 2017, that is when the first federally funded Center of Excellence for Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation began. And then that set of competencies that was put out through the Head Start Center, it was taken from that center, and there was some tweaks. And then some of you might have seen it on the previous iteration of the Center of Excellence. And so for several years, that's what we had. But then when there was the new Center of Excellence, which is the current iteration, we decided to take the competencies as they were, and it was time for a bit of an update. So we did two really important things to those competencies. We looked at it with, I don't actually love this expression because I just don't think it does justice to the work, but we looked at it with an equity lens. We looked at it for inclusive language in a lot of different ways. So certainly, the research had really come a great deal between when the first competencies were being developed and 2020, when we're starting to take another close look at it. And we weren't using words like racism, disruptor of bias, all these really important components. So that language got added in, and we also looked to be much more inclusive of setting. So it makes sense that the first set of competencies were very focused on early care and education because it was funded through Head Start dollars. But as we know that mental health consultation is being implemented in a variety of early childhood settings, we wanted the language to reflect that. So all that happened, pretty much in the first year of the current Center of Excellence, and so that is what you see now if you were to go to our website, and that is the language that was used in this crosswalk. And I know everyone that I am presenting with today would be really, or probably has heard me say this and cringes when I'm like, it's time for another update, but that would totally change the crosswalk. So, we'll just hold that for a minute. So anyways, actually I have a timer up for myself because I could talk about this stuff for so long. And I just have another minute or so because I really want to get to more of an implementation story about that we're going to hear from our colleagues. But I just wanted to say, two other important, I'll say them quickly, though they're not quick pieces of information. But when we talk about the criteria, the qualifications, how does one become a mental health consultant? I always want to say as loudly and clearly as I can that at this point in time, we do not have an endorsement for infant and early childhood mental health consultation. The Center of Excellence has identified a number of qualifications. This has been something we've all been talking about, everyone on this call and, and our colleagues for years, but it is not the case at this moment in time where you can take a test and say, I officially am a mental health consultant. We have a lot of materials on our website, on the Center of Excellence website, and I will be sure to drop that in the chat when I finish talking. And I'm always happy to talk more with individuals that are looking to go that route. But at this point, we don't have an endorsement process, and there isn't a test or anything like that. But that is one way, just one of the reasons why I'm so excited about this crosswalk, because exactly as Nicole was sharing about, this is a really important and helpful tool to help you develop an internal pathway if perhaps you are endorsed and you're looking to become a mental health consultant, or either way, no matter where you're entering into the work, this is going to be a really, really useful tool. Oh, there's my timer. Okay, I did it. I'm gonna turn it back. Oh gosh, how do I turn it off though? All right, back to you, Megan. Thank you all so much, and always lots more to chat about. So excited to be here with you all.
Thank you, Lauren. I think we can all agree as infant mental health people, our origin stories are important to know, a little bit of our history and where we've come from. So that was really helpful. Thanks, Lauren. And Andrea from the Alliance, now I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Megan, go ahead and change slides. So the competency guidelines that the Alliance sort of upholds and represents were really born out of Michigan. And just like Megan and Lauren described, like the origin story is really important and kind of similar to what Lauren described with Georgetown. There was a group of professionals in Michigan 20 plus years ago who developed these competencies, kind of trying to develop like this shared language and understanding around this work that they were doing in home visiting and like really therapy focused home visiting. And as they sort of like grew this collective understanding and language, developing the competency guidelines, it became sort of like this foundational knowledge and skill base to like promote and understand and create a standard of best practice in the community. So like growing out of Michigan and growing out of Michigan's Association of Infant Mental Health developed from there. It then got introduced to other states and sort of really started building the community around these shared standards and started really looking at other scopes of practice and systems as well. So born out of one really specific scope, this development of a common language became what was like really a knowledge base that like was really applicable to people across sectors and to professionals who are working with the pregnancy through 6-year-old population who maybe hadn't even identified themselves as being infant mental health professionals. We've worked with sectors of the population who are in early childhood education, and they viewed themselves as educators, rightfully, understandably, as their profession. But there's this overlap of what was so important about infant mental health that was showing up in their work or that was benefiting their work. And so this competency guidelines served a lot of different purposes and sort of like creating this knowledge base, creating this skill base that people, an individual can use to guide their professional development, to kind of map out in their career, where's my gaps? Where's things I need to know? What are things I need to know and learn in order to kind of have this sort of like base understanding, but also like a tool to really expand what we understand is infant mental health. Where is it showing up? Where is it needed? And how in systems even can this be like embedded in order to kind of support not just the individuals shaping their trajectory, but kind of like the community as a whole in a lot of different angles, supporting what's best practice and what's best for babies. So it was really developed to sort of, you know, build that foundational understanding, set standards across scopes, across systems, show where you map out where you want to go, map out where a system wants to go, map out where an organization wants to go in order to do this important work. Really strengthening how we promote and understand infant mental health. It's become a really collaborative tool, which this is a really prime example, where we're not competing with each other. We're not saying have the Georgetown competencies or have, you know, my AIMS competency guidelines. We're saying they're both really important and really interesting and really supportive to your work. And there's spaces where there's overlap, and that's super important to know. And there's spaces where we can see where there's gap areas where you may want to learn more in one direction or the other to support the trajectory or the path that you're on as a professional. So it's been a real important tool for around collaboration and training and evaluation that all of those different individual organization systems can kind of use to support the workforce. It promotes growth and change. It really has is designed to sort of evolve with the system, and it lays a foundation for what we talk about as endorsement, which is sort of where you then capture it all and kind of say, okay, I've got this sort of knowledge base, I've got these skills, and what does this mean? It means kind of I've stamped a credential on my profession to show the world and to advocate for myself, advocate for the field, and demonstrate sort of this across cultures, across states, practice that we're all kind of believing in and upholding. You can go ahead to the next slide. So I thought just really important to kind of mention with competencies in general. Competencies can sound like a word that's like a hard stop, like I learned it and I'm done. But the competency guidelines were really developed to promote ongoing learning. And that's for the professional, but it's also for the bigger system. So the competencies are here to kind of set the standard that we can kind of understand this language, this knowledge base. What do I need to know about pregnancy and early parenthood and in utero experiences? What do I need to understand about reflective practice, parallel process? So it creates sort of this standard and language. The workforce adopts this language and sort of like starts to learn, okay, how do I learn more about this? How do I get these skills and knowledge base under my belt, so that they can inform their work with families, so that they can take those skills and really integrate it then into how they're showing up with families, how they're being with families, what they know about families. And then the needs of the families and babies grow and evolve. This is a community that, you know, with just the act of like relationship-based and reflective practice in general, we learn more and more and more as individual professionals and as a culture as a whole. So then as the professional learns from the community what these families need, what's important for us to know when working with the families, informed by them. And that then informs the competencies. So it's really designed to be a really cyclical, growing process between each layer of the system down to the baby, so that we can keep upholding, what is new and what is growing. I think about, the folks in Michigan who sat down and developed these competencies 20 years ago, and how rapidly infant mental health was growing at that time, hugely in Michigan, and to different degrees across different states. There's communities where it still is new, some of the infant mental health concepts, and there's communities where, they've been doing infant mental health similarly or differently in other ways. And so this is kind of really been able to link a lot of those communities together so that we can kind of keep growing together and evolving. Go ahead to the next slide. And then this is just sort of a map of each state in green means that an association, the state association, has taken on the competency guidelines and is offering it to the professionals in their state. So it means it's available to the workforce, but it also means that association is on a systems level trying to develop the tools and resources that community needs, that network they're building needs, in order to meet the competencies, in order to develop these skills and knowledge base, and in order to have the tools more at their fingertips, more readily accessible, to support their work with babies. So this is just a map to kind of show how this community is growing. Crosswalk with Georgetown, I almost want like a map of that to kind of see now where that community is growing. You see Australia and Ireland are on there. It's becoming an international community, which is really exciting. So a huge piece of the competency guidelines has really been building this network that shares in this like common best practice standard, which I don't know, there's something kind of feels funny about best practice standard. There's one way, but I think really what it feels like is a network of professionals who really believe in like the power of this work, the power of like relationship-based work and reflective work, and the power of infant mental health services in whatever form and whatever scope that they're showing up. But there's something really important about that emphasis that we put on that, and the knowledge and skills that we're bringing to our families that's bettering the lives of the infants right now, and like building a really strong community for the future. So the network supports the systems that are supporting the workforce. The competencies support the workforce and like their development, their professional development, and their sort of path and trajectory. And then it integrates the relationship-based reflective practice into many layers and sectors: direct service, administrative, policy, research, and scopes: early childhood education, case management, home visiting. And why? Because we know what is good for the workforce is good for babies. We know that being able to give professionals these tools, shared language, a way to really understand, okay, this training that I'm taking here, or this course that I'm taking with, I think, a certification program that I'm taking here at Georgetown, is overlapping with this other piece that's really important to me. Or maybe it's overlapping with an endorsement that I already have. So being able to really have those tools and have that understanding is supporting our babies and helping our communities grow strong. Pass it back to you, Megan.
Thanks, Andrea. Also very helpful information and a little bit of history and clarification. Nisha did ask one question in the chat about the difference between the light blue and dark blue on the map. I think I know, but I'm going to let you answer for sure.
Yeah. So the blue on the map is states that are under consideration. So they've kind of taken on the competencies. They've not really taken on endorsement, but they're really interested in it. It can take a state, a system, like a association for infant mental health, some time to figure out, how do I take these concepts and embed them into our association, so that we can sort of roll this out for the workforce? How do we connect to these different communities? What's that going to look like? Sometimes a state is even developing their association for infant mental health in order to be able to roll out the competencies. So they really kind of grow together. So it can take some time where states are really getting started in that. And then the green is when they're kind of fully have rolled out.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrea. So that's a great point. Just as we all know that babies go through stages of development, so do systems as they go through stages of development, and tools go through stages of development. And so I am delighted to introduce our colleague and my friend, Erin Henderson Lacerdo from Hawaii. And Erin is here to talk story and to share Hawaii's story on the evolution and development of how this tool has become alive and also helped shape the system that Erin and her very diligent and wonderful colleagues are in the midst of. So, Erin, please share.
Hello, everyone. I'm Erin from the Association for Infant Mental Health at Hawaii, and I'm hoping to give a little context as to why this crosswalk was really important for us, as well as some ideas of how we intend to use it. So in our state, we don't have enough mental health therapists to go around. I'm sure other states are experiencing this as well, especially in our rural communities, however. And as an island state, some of our communities only have access to providers through telehealth, or a provider may need to either travel to that island or the family might need to travel to a different island. So as you can see on this map here, most of the population is located on Oahu, which means most of the resources, including mental health services, is also located on Oahu. However, we of course have children across our state. Understanding how geography impacts access is important because one of the main reasons we wanted this crosswalk was to see if there was a way that endorsement could provide greater access to mental health consultation. And so I'm gonna give a little bit of history also. On the next slide, please. When we began our journey, this journey with the crosswalk, the primary users of this time of infant and early childhood mental health consultation truly was our Head Start and Early Head Start programs. And many other systems in our state had invested in learning about and putting together the pyramid model here. And mental health consultation truly does align very well with the pyramid model, with the Center of Excellence competencies as well. And we did have the creation of a state behavioral health plan, with consultation as one of the main strategies. And so this made access to high quality infant and early childhood mental health consultants as a priority for all the other sectors outside of Head Start and Early Head Start. Our state also recognizes our early childhood system as what we call mixed delivery, meaning both public and private providers. And we have 4 different settings. We recognize 4 settings: center-based care, family child care, home-based instruction programs, and family-child interactive learning. And so we needed a way to find consultants for all of these settings. And so since there was no, as Lauren had referenced earlier, right, there's no real endorsement, so to speak, for consultants. However, there are competencies. And so we did want to show that these competencies were not in competition with one another, but indeed were complementary to one another. So before the crosswalk, really the only way to be a mental health consultant was to be a licensed mental health provider. And our Head Start and Early Head Start programs had a history of difficulty finding mental health consultants who could support their programs. This is in our state, specific to our state. And with that understanding, we also wanted to know what created a quality consultant. And we were interested in learning about how endorsement could support infant and early childhood mental health consultants. And so this crosswalk is helping us to be able to take each set of competencies to support the development of mental health consultants going forward into our system. Okay, so our next slide, I'm gonna take a little second to just introduce you to a concept that we here in Hawaii strongly believe in. It's one of our Olala no Eau, which is our wise sayings or our words from our elders, is A'ohe pau ka ike ka halau ho'okahi, meaning not all knowledge is learned in one school. This is wonderful timing because this month is actually the month when this festival takes place, the Merry Monarch Festival, where hula troops from around the world come to compete. Pictured here are kumu hula, or hula teachers, who were selected to compete in the competition in the past few years. Each one of these kumu hula has their own genealogy from whom they've learned hula. Each one has their own way of dancing, yet each one of them still dances hula. In the next slide, I'm going to show you a brief video where these kumu hula are brought on stage at the end of the night and are dancing together. What's really important to note is they're all dancing to the same song. There's not going to be any music because I'll be narrating a little bit for you, but we'll go ahead and hit play on the next slide, please. Okay, so here you can see they're all dancing to the same song, but there's different motions happening. And right there, they're kind of in sync, right? And then you see differences going across the stage and similarities once again between the different groups. And you can see that some dancers are spinning, some are standing, some are doing very different motions, and yet they're all dancing hula. So the questions, right, was that even though their motions are different, they still hold true. And would we agree that indeed they are all dancing hula, and in fact to the same song? I hope so. And so this is what our crosswalk is doing. It's helping us to find the places of alignment, which parts are the same, which parts are different, what makes it hula, what makes it mental health consultation. In many ways, there are many ways to provide mental health consultation and many ways to learn about mental health. The competencies to endorsement strengthens and covers your mental health experience specific to 0 to 5. The consultation competencies really focus on how to be a consultant in the early childhood arena. And the crosswalk helps to provide a pathway so that anyone interested in providing consultation can identify what they need based on learning what they already have. Okay, so I'd like to move us now into a definition of infant and early childhood mental health consultation as defined by their Center of Excellence. So here you can see that infant and early childhood mental health is labeled as a prevention-based approach that pairs a consultant with adults who work with infants and young children in the various settings. And then it's not about fixing children and it's not therapy. However, it is about equipping caregivers to facilitate healthy social-emotional development. And so what I'd really like to point out here is that there are some additional research studies that show that racial and ethnic matching of the consultant to the consultee impacts and improves child outcomes. That there's a lot of work around understanding how Black and Indigenous people of color do not have access to the same advanced mental health training as others, as their counterparts, and perhaps they even might think of mental health differently than what some of the other systems have told them it is. So the question then becomes, who has access to Western formal mental health training? And for some of the settings here in Hawaii, there might be pushback from the community and a rejection of some of those mental health practices. What would happen if we only accepted one way of qualifying infant and early childhood mental health consultants? We would not allow for the richness and diversity of the workforce to support the early childhood arena in the 4 settings in our state. We would, in fact, be systematically rejecting the notion that not all knowledge is learned in one school by failing to find pathways for those who learn their mental health background outside of a master's degree. And so this is how Hawaii intends to use this crosswalk. On the next slide here, you'll see that there are 4 elements that we have identified. And we see high quality infant and early childhood mental health consultants as embodying both sets of competencies, coupled with experience in provided consultation. We have a need to support the early childhood workforce, which is growing in its understanding of trauma, trauma-informed care, trauma-informed responsiveness, and carrying a relationship-based lens. And so we are working to develop a system that will support a growing field of IECMH consultation in our state. The elements listed in this graphic are what we consider the hallmarks of each of these competencies, and we at Aim High are working to train professionals to meet the competencies. taking them from wherever they are in their professional journey and providing them with opportunity to growing into becoming an infant and early childhood mental health consultant. Another part of our work is providing opportunities for our state partners to gain an understanding of why competency-based practice is crucial to the quality of services and to recognize that the system could accommodate for people growing into their profession. I loved Nicole's statement earlier where she said that high quality consultants don't just grow on trees, and that's so true. And so I think that's kind of a recognition that we have, that people might be on a different pathway and that we could recognize them and they could still do really great work. So this crosswalk has given us the opportunity to discuss the cross-section of infant early childhood mental health and consultation, and providing a way for system leaders and direct practitioners to understand how they are different and yet how they're also the same. And so on our next slide, Nicole did show a portion of the crosswalk earlier, and here is the key that is on the crosswalk. And what's important to gather is that both sets of competencies are very thorough, well-designed. And when you combine these competencies, I truly believe that the sum is greater than the parts. Another thing that we do in Hawaii is tell bo'olelo, or tell stories. So I'd like to share one with you now. When we began our consultation for some Head Start and Early Head Start programs a few years back, we asked them if we could do a few things. Well, one was to debrief our observations with the staff. The other was when we got called to do a child-specific observation, could we meet with the family and could we debrief with the team? And the programs were like, yeah, you want to do that? And we're like, of course I want to do that. And I said, is it okay? And they said, well, yeah, it's just we've never had a consultant ask us to do that before. And so while we were shocked, we also want to recognize that we leaned into that because we are so deeply steeped in infant and early childhood mental health competencies that we believe deeply in relationship-based work. And so I'll share one more story here of a recent observation that I've done for a child. And this child was reported to have those challenging behaviors in the classroom, right? Pinching, hitting, slapping. This child would do this throughout the day for both teachers and staff. No rhyme or reason from what we could tell. And so I went and did my observation, and I met with her foster mother. I met with the staff. And through conversation, I found out that this child, who was heading to kindergarten in the next year, was not going to be adopted by the family she was staying with and had been living with for the past 4 years. I found out that she was the only foster child in this home, and that the other 5 children in the home were siblings and biologically related to the foster mother. And so now I saw her behavior very differently, that she was communicating a need for connection, a need to be seen, and her, what we view as challenging behaviors, and really were, for the teachers, were also bids for attention and just requests to be connected with someone else. And so while we did come up with a plan to support the classroom, we also developed a plan to find a therapeutic program that would stay with this child until adulthood, recognizing that early relationships in her life were disrupted, uncertain, transitioning. And we wanted to find a relationship that would stay stable for her. So while I do believe that another mental health consultant might also take a very similar path, I do believe that decisions made in this case were from leaning on the consultative stance and attachment and relationship-based framework, which stems from both of these sets of competencies. So I hope this story paints a little bit of a picture of how blending the 2 sets of competencies can create a holistic approach to supporting those challenging behaviors in the classroom, at home, and in other learning settings. Okay. We'll go to the next slide. And I just made a quick table, and please note that this is just an example. I guess I should have put example very large on there. But this is just an example of how 2 different practitioners coming into the field from varying backgrounds, but might be interested in providing infant and early childhood mental health consultation, could use the crosswalk as a path for both of them to look and say, what do I have? What do I need? And then an organization like ours might be able to help to identify the places where they could get professional development support. And these people could both be wonderful consultants in the community. I'm looking at Lehua, who is a 15-year infant toddler caregiver. I would say that she probably knows a whole lot about relationships and creating safe, stable, nurturing environments. So how can we help her gain some of the consultative competencies so that she can better serve her community? So this really does give people a place to land, or professionals a place to land, for those who might be ready to not necessarily leave the field, but perhaps leave the position that they're in, or also alleviate some of the pressure on the clinical mental health workforce to be in all the places at all the time and to be specialized. And so we really do want to and aim to support consultants who embody the best practices in both sets of the competencies. Okay, so I think that's all I have. So I'll turn it back to you, Megan.
Thank you so much, Erin. Mahalo nui for those beautiful stories. Excuse me. What better way, through so many different ways, did you describe your experience, but also the beautiful way you have married the culture, your culture, the many different cultures within Hawaii and within your system to use this tool, and just illustrated beautifully. So thank you so much. We have a few minutes for questions. If people can put them in the chat or put them in the Q&A. We are kind of curious about, again, we've been working on this for definitely a few years now. And so we're curious about what you think, what resonated for you, how you see yourself using this tool, or how you see this being integrated into maybe the systems that you make decisions for. And while we're waiting for some of those questions, I'll invite Nicole and Lauren and Andrea back in, like after hearing all together. Any other thoughts that you would like to share? I will say yes. Whoever registered for this presentation will receive a link to the recording and the slide deck as well. Jessica has a question about seeing this crosswalk as being interdisciplinary. What do y'all think?
I can start by saying just something about, from the perspective of mental health consultation. And I think for a very long time, it was sort of assumed that, and the Center of Excellence has said this, I believe it is still on our website. So I always really welcome the opportunity to talk about this. We say that you need to be, or, in an ideal world, that you would have a degree, a professional, a graduate degree in, a discipline like social work, like, counseling, a mental health degree, and to be licensed or licensed eligible. And it's a really complex topic to talk about for all the, Erin just described, she just described it so well in such a beautiful example of all the different areas that we need our workforce to have strengths in. And so I think, it is problematic to say, no, it's just these couple degrees and that's what you need and that's it. And the truth is, it is more complex than any way we could distill it down, because if we start looking at all the, start really looking through the competencies, what we want a mental health consultant to be proficient in, it's a really, really long list. And so, the truth is, I don't know that any one degree program is gonna get someone there. I went to social work school, in the early 2000s, and then I went on to be a mental health consultant. I didn't get any training in infant and early childhood mental health. I didn't even know that was a thing. And so I am certainly the first to say that having those few letters after my name did not did not equip me to go into the field. It was truly all this additional support and training that I was able to access down the road. So it's sort of a very long-winded way of saying, I do think that that exploring these competencies makes the work much more interdisciplinary and makes it much more accessible to those coming to this work from a really wide variety of backgrounds. I once had the opportunity to help support somebody who wanted to become a mental health consultant who was an occupational therapist in an early education program for many years. I can guarantee you that that person, it was a delight to support that individual. It didn't have the mental health degree. It had a whole lot of other really important competencies. So I'll stop there for a minute. I could talk for a long time about it. It's a great question.
Thanks, Lauren. Yes, I think we could all talk a long time about this, but thank you for that insight. I see a question in the Q&A from Cassandra, and she says, how do you support providers to walk through the crosswalk? Do you have a coordinator within your association? Erin, I think this is probably for you. And how do you see this as a way to support the increased workforce in consultation? Great questions.
Right, thank you. So I'll, let's see, do we have a coordinator? Yes. I'm like, I don't really have an answer. The truth is we have very slim staff. So if you ask any of us, we would be the one assisting. So I think as of right now, you could, Erica actually is in the chat box. So she does provide some support as well for this. Sorry, the question just disappeared. Let me get back to it. And I do see this as a way to increase the workforce in consultation in our state, at least, where we do have, I love Lauren's example because we do have a wonderful, wonderful woman who works in our, on our Hawaii island, and she is an occupational therapist who also really loves family childcare. And so she is fabulous in so many ways. And so she's somebody who really could be providing a lot of support, and we'd want to find a way to be able to recognize what she's capable of doing based on the experiences that she's had post degree or post whatever her formal education would be, right? So yes, we do see this as a way to support the workforce as well as an opportunity to expand kind of our own thinking of what mental health is, who can support mental health, and also to recognize, and I didn't touch upon this in the presentation, but also to recognize that we have a lot of cultural practitioners who do indeed provide mental health support. And so how would we recognize the work that they do, because the things that they're taught were handed down generation after generation and not necessarily learned in a brick and mortar university. So this would also provide an opportunity for our cultural practitioners to be able to provide mental health consultation if that's something that they would like to do for our community-based, like Native Hawaiian or other indigenous type of educational settings. Sorry, that was a long answer. Hope that was clear.
Yes, again, this is complicated, so that requires a lot of description. Thank you. I'm looking through, we probably have questions for, I'm looking through the chat, some folks in the chat saying thank you. Validation of their work together. Sarah, thank you from being here from the Erickson Institute. There's some questions about that, and Sarah put her email in the chat. So that's great. Are there opportunities to provide supports to individuals who offer services to IECMH groups in other languages, specifically Spanish? Great question. Lauren, I know COE has a ton of resources. Do we have any in different languages?
We do have some. We are working on as many as possible. We're making our way through them. As you, I would think anyone joining this webinar will appreciate that it's really hard to do a good translation into any language because so many these terms can be very nuanced. So it's, you know, these are not documents we can run through a you know, Google Translate kind of thing. So what we've done for the documents that we have translated into Spanish is, you know, we work with an outside vendor and then use make sure we find subject matter experts native in the language that the request is being made. So if you are looking through our website and you through our website and the resources and don't see like the PDF, for example, that is in Spanish, that means we don't have it yet. You can absolutely make the request. We have a queue and we are working our way through it. And it's a very noted gap. And again, working on it, but it's not something I'm willing to say, oh, let's just do the best we can. We want to really maintain integrity to the, for all the reasons that I think I don't need to repeat. But it's a great question. Keep the pressure on, please.
Yes, we say ask for what you need, right? And we would love to hear. We would love to hear what your needs are. I know we don't have time to get through all the questions, and we want to be respectful of your time as well. We know we're coming up to the hour, but again, I want to say thank you, and again, mahalo nui, Erin, for all of your hard work on this, and your staff. And everyone who's just been working on this for so many years. I will say our email addresses for each of us are in the last slide of the presentation. So please follow up with questions if you have. We're happy to follow up as much as we can. Any last thoughts? Anyone?
Really grateful to Erin and the Association for Infant Mental Health in Hawaii that really made, like I said, got the crosswalk across the finish line. Thank you.
Yes. Wonderful.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you. I just want to say mahalo.
Yeah. Andrea?
I was
Yes.
gonna say thank you with everybody, and yeah, really exciting that it's done and out there for the community to use.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, everyone. All right, we're grateful for you and all the work that you do across this nation and world. We have friends from all over the world here today. So thank you again. Happy spring, and we'll be in touch. Bye-bye.